I don't know if all architects are like this, but healthcare architects, it's like they have to put their stamp on their buildings. And the last thing they want to do is make their building look anything like the building that it's going to be attached to. So it probably took us 6 months of saying, no, that's a lovely building, that's a lovely design, but, you know, we don't want an all-glass building, or we don't want, you know, a shape that doesn't look anything like what we have currently built. Our direction to them is we want when it's going to be added on to look like it was built at the same time as the ESSB. And that really took the wind out of their creative sails, but finally they agreed, and then it just was a matter of, well, its use is a little bit different and the layout is a little bit different, so we settled on design features that we would replicate, and I think they did a pretty good job. But as Carla mentioned, for those of you, if you've ever had a lab test, I know. This is the blood draw station. So you walk in the main building and blood draw. Well, you walk just a little bit past the blood draw station, and then there's the access point to this building, and the radiation oncology vault will be right off of that. And this actually is its own separate building that Carla mentioned is well fortified, and then it will attach to the new building. And the vault will be here, and then radiation oncology offices and all of the support services for it will be there. So that's certainly the most exciting part. In addition, another piece to the new building is additional surgery centers that hospitals, try as they might, have a difficult time replicating the ambulatory surgery center experience. And my wife had minor foot surgery not too long ago, and we went to it was a postal physician, we went to a surgery center there. And it's because they follow different rules and different regulations and have different requirements, it's just a different experience at a surgery center than at a hospital. So we needed to expand our surgery capacity. So we are building 3 ambulatory surgery centers in this new building. Since 80% of our surgery procedures now are outpatient, that we are going to replicate that outpatient experience, that so you don't kind of get caught up in all of the important but arguably necessary bureaucracy of registration and waiting and getting bumped if that was an emergency surgery. So while it will be operated by the same surgery department, it's going to be designed to accommodate an outpatient surgery market. So we are very excited about that, and that is another financial driver to the project by adding more surgery procedures. So the ambulatory surgery center and the OBGYN clinic will be on the first floor, and then neurology, pulmonology, ENT, and additional exam space for plastics and wrist, geriatrics, and a little bit of extra space for the next specialist will be on the second floor. And then on the other side, the one-story building is the kitchen, cafeteria, and some other employee amenity services. So that's what we're looking to build. Yeah.
So I think I might have missed it. Did you say that cardiology was one of the specialists that might be considered in your surgical center or by your ASC? Or are you thinking of a cath lab in the future?
No.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah. The state regulates very few services, but one service they regulate pretty closely is cardiac catheterizations, and you have to be able to demonstrate doing. I think the number is like 225 a year, because they believe that volume is a reflection of quality, or quality is a reflection of volume, and our size doesn't generate that many. So that's a service we will always keep our eye on, but it won't be part of this project. We have a partnership with St. Michael's Medical Center for our cardiology program. Great doctors who, if you've ever seen them, they seem like they're Jefferson healthcare providers, but they're actually from St. Mike's, and creates a real seamless transition to St. Mike's Catholic. Yeah.
Mike, maybe that's a good segue to a question I've got, and that is, over your career, you've seen a lot of consolidation in healthcare. And is that a good thing? And probably more specifically, Jefferson remains independent largely.
Yeah.
And do you think you'll be able to, or will be able to keep it that way?
I'll take the first part of that question first. Consolidation can be a good thing. I mean, there's no question that there's economies of scale in some of the back office parts of our operation. And if you work with a huge system for purchasing supplies, or a huge system to oversee the revenue cycle, or some of that stuff where you can do it cheaper if you do more of it, that reduces the cost of healthcare. I think the biggest downside to consolidation is the loss of local control. And I think that some of the big systems probably underappreciated that. And that even before you get to the important community decisions like what should your reproductive services program look like, or what should your death with dignity program look like. Those are non-starters in some communities. But what's powerful about our model is that a group of community members could say, look, that we think the hospital can do better for us, needs to think about providing this service. And then there's only two places to stop afterwards. It's like my office and the board, Bruce. So there's not, well, it's in our corporate office. You know, they won't let us do that. And when you are part of a big system, that is completely lost. And then the budgets and the strategic planning, and so much of that work just comes from Chicago or wherever. And I thought that was a minor problem 5 to 10 years ago. I think it's a major problem now, and I think that the bigger systems are going to have to relook at what local governance means. It has to be a little more local control and autonomy. Do I think Jefferson Healthcare will be independent? Well, it's our number one goal. And in fact, when I first got here, I would be accustomed to speaking to groups like this and talk a lot about the financial performance of the hospital. So I would, show the income statement and the balance sheet and say, oh, we're doing pretty well here. Look at the revenue we're creating here, a margin of 5 or 6%. That's pretty good for a rural hospital. And there would be questions disguised as criticism, as what the hell do you have a bottom line for? Why aren't you not for profit? You're a public hospital district. Why aren't you spending every dollar providing care? Which wasn't an unreasonable question from one perspective, but because we don't have a financial safety net, and that we have to have enough financial stability to weather through rainy days. Now when I show the income statement and the balance sheet and talk about financial performance, I talk about it as sustainability. I talk about it in terms of we don't want another logo on our sign. And in order for us to maintain operational autonomy, we have to maintain financial autonomy. And then it's like, okay, begrudging agreement that I guess you do have to pay attention to a bottom line, and a bottom line is a good thing from that perspective. But the large critical access hospitals, and We are the largest critical access hospital in the state. Small hospital by most measures, but for this particular model, we're a large one. It's a pretty safe harbor to be in a storm, because as was discussed, we're paid on a closer to cost basis. Look at Medical Center in Los Angeles, and some of their Medicaid patients, they get like 16% of costs. And I don't know how you make a business work on that, where we get nearly 100% of eligible costs. So if we're careful and make more right decisions than wrong ones, we should be able to make this work. And also, I suspect at some point, it's probably when charity care reaches a level, I think it's about $3.5 million now, but when that reaches a $4 or $5 million level, and some really important services that, due to their reliance on non-critical access eligible services, are driving significant losses, and OBGYN is one of them. I think we would begin having a discussion with the community and say we need a little bit of help. That the hospitals around us get 10 times more tax support than we do, and in order for us to keep doing these things, there needs to be a discussion. But that's not, that we're going to try like hell to try to make continue to have Jefferson Healthcare work just on the business model. But if it's a matter of having our independence threatened, that will be a discussion ultimately that the community needs to be involved in. But I frequently kid the board that my last great act at Jefferson Healthcare would be to recommend to them that we sell out to a system. Okay, thank you. We're going to bring the next person will make sure that doesn't happen. So we're pretty motivated to avoid that. Yeah.
What does critical access mean?
It's a great question, and I realize that I probably should answer that. That years ago, probably 20 some odd years ago, hospitals like Jefferson Healthcare were really, really struggling because they were paid the same way as all other hospitals, and that's a assumption with that payment methodology is that you have a reasonable volume of patients. We deliver 80 babies a year, which, and if you kind of do the math and back that out, and how many a week is that? If they occur just like in perfectly distributed ways, which they don't. It's not uncommon. One month we had 0 babies. This month we had 4 babies in January, 4 babies in one day, and then not another baby until the end of the month. But that's a very low number. And they were losing millions of dollars each year because it has to be staffed 24/7 in case patients show up. And this was happening all across the state. These small rural hospitals that were taking care of communities like ours were financially underwater because of the old payment mechanism. So a bunch of smart people went to DC and Olympia and said, if a hospital in Port Townsend is going to provide a obstetric service to our community, which is pretty important for this community, it needs to have its cost covered. So the federal government and state government said that's a reasonable proposition. We'll allow that on the condition that you cap your inpatient beds at 25 and that you only do cases that require a 3-day stay or less. So we have 25 beds, and at some point, some days we go right up to that, and our average length of stay needs to stay below 3 days. But the key distinction is that we are paid differently. We send in a cost report at the end of the year, and that there's a reconciliation process that goes on with Medicare and Medicaid. And if they paid us below our costs, we get extra money. But if they paid us above our costs, we have to send them a check. But it provides a level of stability that hospitals like in Port Angeles and Aberdeen don't have, and I think they need to have, because it's really less about the size and I think more about the amount of publicly provided care that is in the community.